So, how are we all doing today?
Awesome.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. So, today we're going to be looking at internal characteristics for survival. So, our activity overview. Kidding me. Yeah, it's not. Okay. Well, doesn't look like our video is working, so we're just gonna go right into it then. So the first thing we're doing is we're gonna do a little overview. You guys should have already learned about this before. So we have cold-blooded creatures. Term used to describe organisms that regulate their body temperature using an outside environment. And the slide I was supposed to show you guys at first was gonna have this neat little video of it just pretty much breaking it down for mammals, for the most part, are the ones who are warm-blooded. Then you have reptiles, amphibians, insects that are cold-blooded, fish. I should say some insects. So examples for cold-blooded are going to be snakes, when they lay in the sun or warm their bodies on the hot rocks. Warm-blooded creatures. Term used to describe organisms that are capable of regulating their own temperature through internal means, within reason. So I mean, we're warm-blooded creatures, but if we go outside and it's 20 below, like, what do we start doing? Then we shiver, right? Shiver, we're trying to get our body temperature back up, but we're capable of doing that. Snakes, on the other hand, they have a little harder time. They can shiver, but they're not going to survive in that low temperature environment. Right, examples. Humans and mammals keep their bodies on a constant temperature, no matter how hot or cold it is, again, within reason. So, lab procedures. Keep work area neat and organized. Do not throw the materials. Use materials for their intended purposes. Wait to be instructed before proceeding. Keep voices at a group level. So what I'm talking at right now is probably okay for a group level. Like maybe a little quieter. Activity overview. Each group will play 2 games. Follow the instructions given on your exploration guide and the PowerPoint. Groups will split into pairs. For our purposes, this will be your 5e partners. Pairs will play through the games and answer the questions on their exploration guides. Alright, groups. Group 1. Monique, Taylor, Sarah, Jennifer, and your jobs are listed right there. And since we've been in this classroom long enough, we all know what the abbreviations for our jobs mean. Group, Alexis, Christian, Anais, and David. Again, your jobs are listed right there. There are 2 activities each group will complete. Group 1 will start at activity 1, which is right there. You'll see the game board set up, has the yellow tents. There's going to be rat race. Group 2 will start activity 2, beetles to die for, which is going to be over there with the pink tents. You will have 5 minutes to complete each activity. Once complete, conduct a short tour of each station, and then groups will switch stations when instructed. All right? So guys, once you go to your groups right now, guides. If you have any extra guides, just stack them at the end of your table. Alright, so the rules for each game are written on your papers or your explanation guides. And they're also up here if you want a quick look. You guys have 5 minutes to complete this, and then we're going to restart the timer and you're going to switch stations. Or you're going to switch stations and then we'll restart the timer. There it goes. That's working.
Round 2. Wait, you're at number 3.
Can you be her partner?
Round 2.
Choose the mouse.
Oh,
So
wait,
what I get
roll
3,
5 or
so
6 and aim to the mouse moves 2 spaces every time. So it's 1, 2, right?
Round 8.
It's also like
9.
So it's 10 down.
You can't because
Rolls
it's
2
9. My
is
age is 9.
Oh, okay.
If she wants to eat it, she can, but she's still gonna have to pay the price for eating it.
I know.
Oh, okay.
How the mouse moves 2
Alright, so what is the last word to best that is
more than a snake moves.
Well, so
Three,
sticky.
4.
6. So 6 is
So
hot
the
days.
snake
So
caught up
it's
the
just 3
mouse.
Yes, looks like the snake got him.
So it caught the mouse. So
Yes.
I like to look at it as the snake
I
survives.
think that we only roll 1 dice and we move on both.
Because this
It
was
was
a
a
whole
whole
turn.
snake.
Yeah,
moves
this is
1
every time.
space.
Did any of
So-
this about all the rounds?
So 2.
If they
So
do,
1, 2,
I don't know what
and
space you can cover.
1.
The brownie.
Yes.
Snake moves 1
They're
space.
pretty similar to the color of the table, so we probably just couldn't
5,
see.
so it moves 3.
I think we could
We
eat
couldn't
them.
eat them.
Oh wait, the mouse moves
Oh.
2 spaces.
Oh, because they're so small.
Yeah.
And 2.
Oh, do you think it was a
Might make it.
mechanical thing? Maybe they're too large.
I don't know.
No, I think that 30
2.
cents.
The mouse moves,
So
oh,
yours is
every
like 2, so
yeah,
that's much better.
yeah.
Physical activity, better way to
So,
describe it.
yeah.
I like that.
1.
Not yet.
3,
4.
4 is 2, 1, 2.
Please be the
Okay.
So here.
Yeah.
So the mouse
Please
makes
be
it.
Four.
Mouse made it.
Has 2.
Mouse made it. Barely, but he made it.
Which makes them
5.
oranges.
5 is
1, 2, 3.
3.
4.
6 is 3.
2 spaces.
Whoa. Do you guys wanna run around the game and see if you can see this?
Okay. Should we be different numbers?
Yeah, just go ahead and drop your numbers back in the top.
4 is 1. You don't get to choose who you are.
Not quite yet.
I like that too, you have to choose who you are.
2, 1, 2. So the snake is on.
Oh, 4.
2. Okay, that means
Alright.
3.
1, 2, 3,
So
round
mouse
2.
made it this time.
1, 2, 3, round 2.
No, rude. 3.
We're fine.
1.
1, 2, 3, round 5. 1, 2, 3, round 6.
No, I'm dead.
1, 2, 3, round
2
7.
each.
Oh, I'm
4.
I feel like there's a competition here.
Oh,
So I was trying to
competition.
steal my food too, so I would not.
Wait, what time is it?
So there was competition with you guys?
Do it again.
Oh,
in,
yeah.
in trust pieces, how much you feel.
Dude, I didn't know that we were used to reading ahead of class.
I don't know.
I'm dyslexic.
Three.
Alright. 6.
Glad to see you have an interest in your subjects. So would you go for
Oh, I didn't write anything for my 4.
Five.
There's
Okay. Oh, number 4.
this book
It
right
could
here.
be a rough writing. Multiple types of
All
details.
these traits. Oh, what is that
1,
trait?
2,
You're not supposed to answer
3.
Yeah, there's
man.
clear instructions.
Oh no.
Yeah, but what is that?
Alright, you guys have about 30 seconds.
You're gonna make a band.
Do some speed rolls.
After this part.
Wait, 1, 2, 5.
6.
1, 2, 3.
Wait, I guess then it had the mouse.
When it was hot. This is the two-player game. One player will be the mouse and one player will be the snake. Place your pieces in your designated position.
Sometimes it had the mouse.
Wait, it was here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's one more.
Oh,
That's what I would say.
2.
So it's an apple orange.
Dang.
Alright, you guys, it's time to start cleaning up your lab areas. We're gonna switch stations.
Like better.
Any questions you don't answer, you'll have plenty of time later. And if you have time at the end of the presentation, you guys can answer questions now.
I think we need one more person to play.
Alright, and your Your time starts now.
Papers, all the beetles are poisonous. The birds all have. I don't remember.
One player.
All the beetles are poisonous, but the birds all have different levels of resistance to certain
Okay,
beetle
yeah, it'll be the roll class.
snakes, neutron pairs will
Who's
search the
gonna
beetle
be-
house.
You can
If
play by
the
yourself if you want to,
player does not
but
find a
like
beetle
your
they can
version.
eat during any rounds the first dice.
Okay, all we
If the mouse.
Oh, I see, right away.
Okay, alright. So round one,
So we just grab
you
them.
just grab randomly, but what you can eat.
Wait, so you just roll, so you just
Okay.
double up.
It was cold and the skin moves one
You
space.
could come to a round where you
And I
can't
can
eat,
move 2 paces.
This is, I'm gonna put my
where you don't have the one you can, you can pick another beetle.
But you just have 2 pieces.
Every turn, I roll 2 flicks.
So pick. Oh, you start there.
Yeah, just pick one.
5,
Red,
yeah.
blue, 1, 2.
It's a hot day, this makes
We're
2
going in
spaces. The mouse moves 2 spaces.
I think you move more than 3 spaces.
No, this is my middle, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
3 try.
Oh
No! Water in it.
my gosh, she's gonna give it a minute.
This is unfair.
Yes.
Bye.
You only move 1 space. If you move 2 spaces.
No, I didn't.
Don't worry,
Yes.
the seed is
Round here.
4.
Let me just take them.
Just eat them all. 5.
I win.
No.
That's
5
3
spaces.
spaces.
Again.
Three
I'm gonna win this
spaces.
time.
Yeah.
And that's what I was gonna say, since you guys finished so
Only
fast, you
one
can play it
space.
again and see if you can get the same.
I'm
different-
gonna-
Okay, you have to put your numbers back in the pile.
Go look at him.
Okay, otra más.
Name 1.
No, are we running through it again? Survival.
Yes.
Dang.
I'm gonna say let's
Oh,
play.
yes.
What am I? 6. Again? What the heck?
Okay, ready?
5. 3
Hey, I'm
spaces.
set the number of the colors.
Wait,
Okay.
okay.
No.
I moved 3 spaces.
1, 2, 3.
This is it.
Okay, go.
You moved 2.
I just rolled 5. I just rolled 5.
3 more spaces.
Wait, it doesn't count. You moved 2 spaces.
Yeah,
Oh,
why did you
6.
guys say
6.
I'm dead.
I'm super dead.
What's the winner?
Straight into the mouth,
Who's the
allows
winner?
it to move 2 no matter what it is.
Warm blood.
Oh, it's
That's
one.
like
One.
I just
Okay.
rolled out.
2.
What's the ball?
Okay, this is the last one.
It was able to eat the round dot.
Ready?
Ring the die. Wait, you get to go 2 spaces first. I win, you lose
Okay.
again. Do you wanna switch?
No, I want to stay the
Oh,
same.
I'll be the same.
30 seconds.
I'm the same.
I'm the same.
Wait, I'll be the mouse.
She won't let me be the same.
I'll be the mouse.
I like
I'll be the
sweets.
roller.
I like sweets.
And next round, like, Cecilia, let someone else be the same.
Hi.
Survive
Everyone wants to stay the brown.
3.
This is ridiculous.
5. 1. 6. 3. 4. Oh my gosh, 5.
You're out of luck.
5. You
Oh,
got
wait,
in the
no,
4.
no. If it gets to the bird at the same time.
Yeah, they're all
the snake
poisonous.
wins.
Oh.
Snake. I'm just a better mouse.
Okay, I'll roll
Just a
now.
better.
Oh, okay. So I'll be the same. Oh, you be the same. I'll be the mouse.
Or, yeah. 1, 2, 3.
No,
So
2.
what'd you guys notice about
1.
maybe what bird you were even remembering?
1, 2.
They were always brown.
1.
What do you think then?
Oh, get some cheese. Have a good Netflix night.
And show.
Maybe we'll get my mouse motorcycle.
I just.
1, 2. I'm killing you with my tail. I think they grew up around this bird.
There we go, mouse.
They grew up?
Yeah, like they are that. They were. Yeah.
Alright, you guys have about 30 seconds to finish up.
Oh my gosh.
It's a rapid speed.
3.
Wrap it up.
5. 3. 1. 3.
Oh, wait, I think I just won.
No.
Yeah, you
1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm not.
And 1, 2. Yeah, you won.
I don't have a camera.
Alright, you guys can start cleaning up your stations and finish answering your questions.
It's
hot.
Any
The
other
bee.
Oh, internal. Internal.
Now if I can get you guys to return to your seats. Also, please stay in the groups that you are assigned.
Dang it, it's in the second round. I'll move this way.
Gosh. Okay, cool.
Give you guys a little bit of time to finish answering your questions. You know how that would
Do you think there's a special trait that gets more
That's what I said.
I will never punish a student for reading ahead.
Yes, thermal. Yes,
We were
temperature.
in the GT
regulation,
class, we
temperature.
Alright, so we're gonna start going into the Explorer. So we're gonna review the rat race. Number 1, under what condition did the snake excel and survive? What do you think was going on? Taylor.
It survived better in warm conditions. It could move farther than the cold.
You can move further in the warm than it could in the cold?
Yeah.
Alright. Anybody else have anything different? Alright, so that's pretty much what we had. What do you have, David?
I'm sorry. I was gonna use the word hot, but I knew what Taylor meant.
Okay, so you're gonna just use a different word to describe the same thing. Yeah, I like that. That's okay.
The level of hotness.
Like,
Hotness.
when it was hot because it's cold-blooded,
Warm.
the snake is better in the hot environment than it would be in the cold. We heard both of those answers. So reviewing the rat race 2, under what conditions did the mouse excel and survive? Monique.
I said it did not excel, just because it moved 2 spaces every time.
So it did not excel? So it just
It
stayed,
was-
pretty much stayed a constant?
Yes.
Okay, anybody else have anything different? Yes,
And
Chris.
so when it was cold outside,
Hmm?
when it was cold outside, it excelled because,
Oh,
yeah, it's a snake and it moved.
I like that answer. So
Relativity.
the mouse was able to do well in all the different all the different temperatures. Mice can move in all temperatures because they are warm-blooded, which is that trait. So we're going to review rat race. Do you think there are any special traits that give one or both animals an advantage when it comes to survival? What kind of trait is it? Describe it with your partners. You guys have a minute.
Yes, temperature. Thermal, that sounds like a good word. Thermal rate. What kind of trait is it? It's a.
Well, remember they
Yeah,
said it was warm.
Wait, no, I said warm conditions because that makes the snake warm. And then, so it gives you a chance to survive.
Special traits,
So, the snake has an advantage when it's hot outside, and the animal has a
What did you get, David?
I think it does have a special trait, temperature regulation or thermal regulation, and I believe it is an internal trait.
So that it's an internal trait that it has, something that's helping it excel a little bit better or in either condition? Alright. Anybody else have anything different? No? Pretty much all on the same page? Alright. Has something to do with the cold-blooded versus warm-blooded, that internal temperature. Some trait on the inside. Doom beetles to die for. What trait did the last bird possess that allowed it to survive? Just
It can eat multiple types of beetles.
you can eat multiple types of beetles.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on that? Like, what was so
we
special?
only have bird 1 through bird 3, so it can eat multiple types of beetles, more than the others.
Okay, I like that. Anybody else get anything different? Yes.
We were able to do all 4, so we had the one that had all types of beetles, so the last one that had the brown beetles was able to eat all of them.
Eat all the other kinds of beetles, so that it was the only bird surviving because it could pick and choose. Like that. The bird could eat any of the beetles it wanted to without getting poisoned. Could do beetles to die 4-5. Beetle survives all the rounds. If they did, write about what you think helped them survive. So. Alexis.
I said that the beetles that survived were probably poisonous to more types of birds. So there was less birds feeding on those beetles
So there were less birds feeding on them because they were.
because those beetles were poisonous to the greater number of birds.
Okay. I like that. Anybody have the same, pretty much the same thing, but worded a little differently? Yes.
So we said that the bird 4 that can eat the brown beetles is adapted better because it can eat the brown beetles, which is poisonous to the rest of the birds.
Exactly. They were not eaten as often because of their poison. New beetles to die for. You played 2 games that were models for survival due to special characteristics, traits each animal possess. If there is no outside physical trait that we can observe, what do we call them? I want you guys to discuss this in your group. Again, you guys are going to have a minute, and then we're just going to come up with a semi-operational definition.
I don't like that. I just put feature. You said feature.
Busy, Okay, I do think it's interesting that poisonous physiological. I think it's interesting that poisonous beetles have a trait that helps them get the just the poison.
Yeah,
Birds have a coping mechanism of some type. It's a double example. Awesome. Like a double entendre. It's an unnatural.
All right. What did you guys discuss? David.
Yes. Well, we discussed very similar to the mouse and the snake, but there's an internal trait that both the beetles and the birds have that makes them adapted. We just can't remember a good word for it. It's physiognomic. I just can't remember a word.
So you guys discussed the traits.
That
Did you
were
do it? Okay.
internal.
All right. Monique, what'd you guys discuss?
We said that it was internal features or traits that allow the organisms to survive certain environments.
Oh, that's good. So now we're going to go over what we define. We're going to define what we observed in the lab. Make sure you have an explanation guide, and give your explanation guides a quick once over. If you pass these down.
Alright, awesome. So I'm gonna get us moving. So, defining physical traits. Y'all had this in previous classes, right? We've talked about this already. So if somebody, David, would tell, or wait, I'll take it from one side. You just got called. Jennifer would tell me what you think a physical trait is.
Something on the outside of the body.
Something on the outside of the body. Good. So, physical trait is any observable or measurable characteristic that an organism possesses. So, observable and measurable, what does that kind of mean? Something that you can quantify. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
See it, so it would be on the outside, like Jennifer said. Awesome. Good, good. Do y'all have any? Taylor, you have any examples of physical traits that you can think of?
Like we learned in our previous lesson, hair color and eye color.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Everybody got it all down? So hair color, like you said, claws, nails, body size. So physiological traits. So have we heard the physio? There we go. He kind of said, David kind of said it earlier. So I know we've already said it a couple of times, but just to hear it one more time. Kristen, can you give me your operational definition of what you think this physiological trait is?
Something that is internal, it's inside of an organism.
Okay, awesome. So something internal, so obviously something opposite of physical trait, right? So, sort of. So, physiological trait is any special characteristic related to the function of the structures or processes of an organism's body. So the important part there is the functions, right? So the functions, so you might have something like, so functions of the structures and processes. So like warm-blooded, cold-blooded, there's not really, it's a process, it's a function, right? The function is how it works. Or the poison, the function is that it poisons the other things. So from our exploration guide, can Alexis tell us a couple of examples of physiological traits, or one example?
The warm-blooded versus cold-blooded.
Warm-blooded versus-
Regulation.
Perfect. Does anybody have anything that they can think of that would be a example that was not on our exploration guide?
A bull shark can be in freshwater and saltwater.
There you go. Good. Good. That's a creative one. I like that. All right. Before I go to that though, since you existed, will Jennifer, will you come put physiological traits up for me? Alright, so physiology. So we just did physiological traits. So physiology, what do you think would be different about that? Taylor.
It's something on the inside, not necessarily a trait, but it's related to each individual organism.
Okay. So it's a branch of biology that deals with the forms and functions. So like we said, it can be the forms, the functions on the inside, and internal mechanisms or processes of the organisms. So Taylor, would you mind coming and put this up there for us? So do you see how physiology and physiological traits interrelate? What is important about how they relate, Monique?
Because they're both internal
Internal? There you go.
within an organism.
Good. Does everybody have this written down? If you just put your pencils down whenever you're all ready. Alright, so group talk. So looking at the terms we just covered, I want y'all to discuss within your group if you were able to observe or infer any of these physiological traits present in either of these activities. I know I asked for a couple of examples, but talk amongst your groups.
Metabolism, poisoning.
And then once y'all are finished up amongst your groups, go ahead and put this down.
Poison.
Beetles.
Yeah, the beetles.
It's a physiological trait. I'm sorry,
It's more international.
no, mine at least.
So earlier we already mentioned warm-blooded versus cold-blooded, but there were two more within this activity. David, do you have one of those?
Yes, the production of poison.
The production of poison. What did that?
That was sort of, it was a defense against predation.
So it was the beetles though, that's what
The
you're saying? The beetles
beetles
produce poison? There you go.
Poison.
And that was internal and it was a function of, there you go.
Of their body.
There you go. And Kristen, would you tell me the other one? There was one word within there.
The ability of the birds to eat beetles?
Certain beetles, what would you call that?
Adaptation?
Not close. Monique, what would you call it? Resistance, there you go. So the resistance to poison. Alright, so I'm gonna hand y'all out one of your elaboration guides, and then we're gonna actually go over a couple of really cool physiological traits. As y'all pass this out, go ahead and start looking at the slide. I'm gonna start talking about one of them. So one of my favorite ones. So it doesn't always have to be animals, right? We went over a couple of animals. So one of my favorite ones is actually this flower called the corpse flower. It is the biggest flowering plant, but it's got this one really cool thing. It smells really, really bad. Does anybody know why it would smell bad? To attract flies, there you go. So, it has these two traits, one that is really, really big, and one that it smells bad to attract flies. So, Alexis, which one would be the physical trait?
I don't know the
The
size.
size, there you go. The size, because you can see it, it's on the outside how big the flower is. There you go. And Jennifer, which one would be the physiological trait?
The smell.
The smell. There you go. It attracts flies to them, and it helps the flies. The flies help to pollinate the flower, right? Another really cool one. So up in the Arctic, it's really cold, right? So there's these two animals. They deal with it in two very different ways. Physically, right? They look different. The polar bear, larger body, bigger claws, right? They're very large, imposing, short tail, big teeth. What about the Arctic fox, though? Kristen.
It's leaner,
It's leaner,
has smaller paws,
smaller paws,
shorter snout,
shorter snout,
bigger ears,
bigger ears.
bigger tail.
Awesome. That's perfect. Yellow eyes, small teeth. So one's really, really big and one's really, really small. Taylor, which one would you think survived better in the Arctic, and why?
The fox.
The
because
fox.
They could outrun any predators or catch prey.
Outrun. What about for the cold though? How do you think it defends against the cold?
It's fur.
It's fur. Okay. Cool. So they both survive pretty well. I was just seeing what y'all would think. The bear though, so they both survive two different ways, and they're both physiological traits. So the bear survives the cold because it has this thick layer of fat that is called blubber on the inside. This blubber, it surrounds the hide, and it is like around its organs, so it helps to keep out cold and trap in the heat, right? So it's like it's this internal thing, and it traps it in and internalizes it. It also, like I said, it surrounds the organs, keeps them working, and keeps the heat in. So physically, it looks big, right? But physiologically, why would that? What makes this the physiologically?
It's because it can stay warm.
The function is keeping
Yes.
it warm. The function is the trapping the heat, keeping it inside, that kind of thing. Good. The fox, on the other hand, doesn't have a lot of blubber, right? You don't see that, like Kristen said, thinner. But it has a lot of fur, right? So it's actually got 2 layers of fur instead of just one, which helps it stay warm. So fur that you see is the outer coat, And then underneath that is an undercoat and helps trap the air, the warm air generated by the fox body. So, David, what makes that physical versus physiological?
The body itself isn't, well, it's external, you can see it.
It's external. You can see the outer layer, right?
Yeah.
The outer layer, you can see the outer layer, but the inner layer that's sitting there and it's helping, the inner layer that's keeping the heat trapped, that's what's really protecting it, the function, that's the physiological. Alright, it's also got a cool function that it surrounds his paws and it helps him walk on snow and ice. So humans also have a couple of different physiologies. Before we get to that though, what do you know about humans at high altitudes? Jennifer.
That's harder to breathe.
It's harder to breathe. Why is it harder to breathe?
There's not as much oxygen.
Not as much oxygen. Cool. So, there anything that, if there's not as much oxygen, anything you can think of that might help survive better, or better be survive to, and be, sorry, is there anything that might help you survive better in the high elevation if there's less oxygen? I'm sorry, that was a lot of words. Monique, what could your body do to help?
Maybe
Breathe faster. Okay. Breathe faster, so you'll be breathing in more oxygen. Okay. You get lightheaded. Taylor, you raised your hand.
Yeah, a larger lung capacity.
A larger lung capacity. Okay, cool. Couple of different things. All right. So humans at high altitudes, there's actually a couple of, so the higher you or I go up in the mountains, the less oxygen or air there is for us to breathe. So rapid breathing happens, which leads to lightheadedness and headaches, dizziness, not wanting to eat, right? So basically we have to adjust to it, right? We have to get used to that lack of oxygen. Well, some people whose ancestors have lived in these high places for many generations have now possessed this special physiological adaptation. The Andean people of South America have inherited a special physiological trait that actually allows their blood to carry more oxygen. So if you or I are able to carry, these are random numbers that I'm just using to help explain, but if your blood is able to carry 1 part oxygen, these people might be able to carry 2 parts oxygen. Do you see how that might help? So with the same amount of breath, they can take in more oxygen. So if there's less oxygen, they're able to bring in more. Like I said, those are random numbers, that's not the way that it actually works. But, so they breathe at the same rate as people at sea level and have the same lung size, but they're not gonna suffer from the fatigue. On the opposite of that, there are also these people. Has everybody getting time to fill out everything? Okay, sorry about that, guys. Just wanted to make sure. On the opposite end of that, the Tibetan people of Asia, as Taylor said, what'd you say? You said what might happen? Larger lung size.
To hold oxygen.
Larger, there you go. Larger lung size. So these people possess adaptations that differ from the Andeans. So instead of being able to put more oxygen per blood, they actually have larger lungs to hold more air, and they also have larger blood vessels in order to more quickly move that. So they're able to take in more air, which means take in more oxygen, and then they're able to move more blood at the same time. They also have a rapid breathing, but which usually gives lightheadedness or something, but for some reason they have been able to not have that happen to them. So, showing what we know, we're now going to clear our desks. Y'all got everything. I'm going to pass out your evaluation, guys, so make sure your notes are correct, and then y'all are going to quickly click these. Pass those down. The first part is going to be a short essay, and you're just going to fill out your definitions. And then the second part is going to be matching, so match those to physical or physiological traits, and then you have 10 minutes.